Hey everybody, we are going to do a quick VFX review of the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer. And then I'm going to kind of go over some of my thoughts in regards to this whole franchise and this continuation of these franchises that are pulling from 80s genre cinema and so forth. So let's get started.
What are you doing here in Somerville anyway?
Honestly, my mom won't say it, but we're completely broke. And the only thing that's left in our name is this creepy old farmhouse our grandfather left us in the middle of nowhere. Why'd you bring me up here?
Entertainment value?
What is that?
I don't know.
Somehow, a town that isn't anywhere near a tectonic plate, that has no fault lines, no fracking, no loud music even, is shaking on a daily basis.
Under the dining table now!
Hey, remember that one summer we died under a table?
I found this in my living room.
Whoa, killer replica.
A replica of what?
A ghost trap? There hasn't been a ghost sighting in 30 years. New York in the 80s? It's like The Walking Dead. Your dad never mentioned this to you?
It's just my mom. My grandfather died. My mom says we're just here to pick through the rubble of his life.
Wait a minute. Who are you?
Call it fate. Call it luck. Call it karma. I believe that everything happens for a reason.
Come on, darling.
It has a gunner seat?
Alright, so here we are with the trailer. We're going to go ahead and take a look at some of the VFX, and then I'm going to share with you guys my opinions. So, again, some really nice Vista shots. I wanted to show you guys a trailer for the Super Bowl trailer for Super 8, because to me it just reminded me so much of the Super 8 trailer. Of course, they didn't use the Ghostbusters music or nothing like that, which is kind of smart because everyone's upset about the last movie. So it's not like what it is. And this is where we're going to start to get into the idea of convoluted plots. And convoluted, I'm going to talk about a little bit later, is sort of like this just absolute madness, twisting and mixing of things and trying to connect two things that are so separate. This film doesn't feel like the original Ghostbusters. So you're almost taking two separate movies and you're trying to connect them with, dialogue from Bill Murray and all this. And this whole idea that Egon Spangler built this, had this old house in the middle of a farm. I mean, unless this is like, I don't know, upstate New York or something, I just don't buy this. I don't buy the fact that he had a big barn. He was collecting spores, moles, and funguses, which, again, is like convoluted. You're taking something that was just a simple character trait that was a one joker in the original Ghostbusters when they asked Egon, what do you do? And he says, oh, I collect spores, moles, and funguses. And that was it. Here they have, now we're going to show you all the spores, moles, and funguses he's collecting in his house. It's like, this is what I mean by convoluted. You're taking something, and Ridley Scott did this with Alien Covenant, and he did it with also Prometheus. He was trying desperately to go back to the sandbox. You got these directors of old age, and they're like, I want to go back into that sandbox. They are being nostalgic themselves. And, they're like, oh, well, what if the alien, the jockey in the alien was connected through humans, and then a human eventually created the alien? It's just like so convoluted. So again, it's a little bit crazy. This just feels like it. It feels like the show. I believe this actor was from It. He's also from, obviously, the series Stranger Things, which again is, you could see Sony being the Johnny-come-lately and trying to mix together genres and saying, okay, we'll get money off of this. This shot right here is, to me, reminds me of the shot of the missing dogs from the Super Bowl trailer for the movie Super 8, which I'm going to show you guys. It just feels very Super 8-ish, almost the same framing, except there were little dots to represent the missing dogs. A lot of stuff here. Now you got this guy called Irving the Explainer, Paul Rudd, who's going to basically try to connect, in exposition madness, the two different stories. A bunch of people that are evicted and living on a farm, versus a couple of professors in New York chasing after ghosts. How do you connect these two worlds? Well, you do it with a lot of exposition. So you can see there's all this, what it is. It just feels like Stranger Things. They kind of like, ooh, Stranger Things, we'll throw that in, And I'm not saying this might not be good. What's great is that the original cast, of course, with the exception of Mr. Egon himself, which is unfortunate that he had to pass away. I actually got to meet him. He actually spoke at my graduation at Columbia, and I got to meet him afterwards, which was really cool before he passed. But it's kind of makes sense that they actually went ahead and did this where he's passed away and he's got grandkids and so forth. So I'm guessing that him and that secretary had kids or something. So it's a bit convoluted, and you're just like, I don't know. And then this like jigsaw puzzle. Why would he even do that to hide things like this, I have a couple of predictions for this show, and one of them is that if they're really smart, they'll bring back Zool from the original Star Wars, the original Ghostbusters, because obviously in this trailer they have the dog claw. So the dogs are there. So if they bring back Zool, maybe, as they said, he or she can come in many forms, and she was like some supermodel in the original. I think that would be really cool. I think there's definitely something that you could even use with nostalgia to bring back that enemy. I think that's the only enemy you could really bring back. It's funny, if you just take some time and get out a piece of paper or just put thoughts in your head, it's not hard to see where nostalgia actually writes the script for you, even if you're not the writer of this, which is Reitman's son. But you could see Reitman's son sitting down in his room going, okay, how about Zool? We're bringing Zool back. We'll bring this back. Here's how we can do this. I get a little worried when you got these kids that don't look too serious. I mean, they are kids. Yeah, this is a kid's movie, but I think this is like the 11 character. It's just kind of, I can't connect the two films. That's the thing. It just feels weird. And here's Irving an Explainer again, trying to say, hey, check it out. This is it. Don't you know about this? And so forth. And again, it's all very nostalgia, oh, look, there's the thing, and here's the spores, moles, and funguses that Egon collected. And it just seemed like kind of goofy. Now, visual effects wise, I find that whenever they do these glowing effect stuff, there's not a lot of light reflected on the characters or anything. I mean, it's very hard to do anyway, but it just seems like there's always seems to be this lack of green light. If there's something that bright there, you might want to see a highlight or something. And I noticed that throughout this trailer. It just seems there wasn't no emanation from the light throughout this whole thing. So let's just keep going here. There's not a lot of visual effects. Again, this is very much like the Sense8 Super Bowl trailer. It's hiding everything. It's not showing you anything. With the few visual effect shots they do have, there's like a glowing ground and it looks fake. This looks like, to me, the fakest set I've ever seen in my life. That definitely looks like like just some like backdrop there on a movie set. Again, very Fifth Element. Well, I'm way off. Sorry guys. Really, really big that the Duffer Brothers would always explain is the 80s lighting, which is obviously very, very deep and saturated blues for Moonlight, and that was done a lot in Stranger Things. Stranger Things did it correctly, because Stranger Things was really not following after something. It was literally just about being in the 80s, growing up in the nostalgia, versus replicating some story back then. This right here with the glass breaking is like right out of, and also the school buses, to me again is right out of the Super Bowl trailer for the movie Super 8. It's very Super 8-ish. This looks fake. I hate to tell you, but this just looks really fake. So you got, I don't know if this is people in hell or something, because they got all these hands going up, but it just feels fake and cheesy, and the light emanation doesn't make sense. If this is yellow, why is it red on her face? It just doesn't seem to make sense. I don't know. It just seems kind of strange. Now here is the guess that I would say that most likely is going to be, unless it seems a little bit thicker here, the actual dogs. So again, you just get, it looks like the atypical redos that you see today that are forgotten. So for instance, when they redid The Thing, that was easily forgotten. You know, when they redid all these horror movies of the 80s, they usually are forgotten. They're very easily forgotten, with the exception of It, which did pretty well. Again, what I like is it's anamorphic. I think that's pretty cool. Probably the only cool shot in the whole movie trailer, I think, is kind of cool, is just seeing this kind of go through the cornfields here. And this is a little bit like, okay, I'm all right, I guess, you know. And again, it just seems like the beam coming all the way across, a little bit crazy. And then you got this issue again where it's like this big bright light that's, you know, obviously overexposing the lens and giving a lens flare, is not emanating any light on the actual car itself. I mean, do you see any light emanating on that car whatsoever, and that being that bright? So again, it just seems a little bit goofy. It does have a optical feel to it, in the same way that the old optical effects of the original Ghostbusters were, but I don't know what else to say about that. So again, not too bad of a trailer. You know, one thing I noticed, and this is something very subtle, and it could be just me being goofy, but watch how fast they get away from the director's credit. Watch. I'll just play it. It's like, dude, get away. You know, it's just like, let's slow down there. Jason Reitman. Again, this is not Ivan Reitman, the original director of Ghostbusters. So again, it's just what it is. Now, let's quickly, just briefly go over and take a look at the trailer for Super 8. So again, small town. Again, this was before the release of Stranger Things. That's not to say that the possibility the studio got wind of the script for Super 8 and may have like quickly said, hey, let's make a movie like that. You know, I don't know. I can't call that. But you can just see in this trailer there's a lot of these, you know, windows blowing out and not showing you anything. It just feels something about this trailer, just what it is. And also, so here's a scene where they, you know, very similar to, here's where they're looking at, you know, a map, and you could see like, oh, there's this big circle, and there's like these dogs missing and so forth. And it just felt very much like the Super 8 trailer. And this movie was another example of a wannabe nostalgia, directed by a big A-list director, which didn't do so well. We had very heavy high hopes for it. I remember being first in the theater to see it, and there was nobody in the theater but me. I actually took a picture of myself, just realizing like, wow, this isn't connecting. Now, eventually Stranger Things came out, so here we got the, you know, the lights are going on, the ground shaking, you know, oh, what's going on? So, all right, so let's go to the conclusion here. So here's the definition of convoluted, especially an argument, story, or a sentence. Basically, extremely complex and difficult to follow. And it's not that it's not difficult to follow, it's difficult to connect things to older things. It's always this weird way in which, whether it be, you know, like the prequels or the sequels to Star Wars, there's always this desperate attempt to let's know more, let's learn more about the Sand People, what they eat, what they have for dinner. It's like, no, we don't need to know that stuff. It's just part of the narrative that was there, and it's gone now. Thank you. But really the motivation is to make money. Second definition is technically intricately folded, twisted, or coiled. That's probably a better definition of everything that we see today in regards to the desperate attempt to connect or use nostalgia to get audiences to run into theaters and go, ooh, I want that feeling again, you know. And it's something that's very manipulative today, big time. So anyway, a good example of these is Prometheus and Alien Covenant. The original director, Ridley Scott, who made great movies back in the 80s, he still makes good movies today. I like The Martian, and, it just seems like when you try to, it's like he had a very valid argument when he made Prometheus and Alien Covenant. He said, who is the disc jockey from the original Alien? And the answer is, well, it can't just be an alien because there's no story there. There always has to be, he was smart enough to realize there has to be a human connection. In other words, there has to be some human connection genetically to who the disc jockey was, who the aliens are. And he ended up bringing this convoluted plot all the way through to Alien Covenant, where David, the android, ended up making the robot or ended up making the alien. And then you got all these intermixings of different types of aliens, and it's just a mess. I mean, it's an utter mess. And although I'm sure, Ridley Scott and all his, actors in the movie were having a great time on set, they were making something that was just, ugh, So it is what it is. My final thoughts is the understanding is you're going to ask yourself, like, am I being a wet blanket on Ghostbusters Afterlife? It could be a fun movie. The great news is Bill Murray and the other Ghostbuster originals are alive. Sigourney Weaver's in it. So I don't know how they come in. Are they going to just come out from the city and be like, oh, yeah, we forgot to tell you these are ghosts? So that's a very weird reality of them showing up later on in the movie. So it just seems like this story should have just kept itself with the kids. Connecting it to these people that are just New Yorkers makes no sense to me whatsoever. And everything in it just feels like it's going to be okay, but there's no way it possibly could be great. It just can't be. And if you're just looking for a good time in the theater, that's great and everything. Go ahead, enjoy yourself. I'm sure you'll have a couple of nostalgic kicks, or nods or nudges to your buddy next to you. But to me, the biggest thing you got to remember is what is missing here. And what's missing here are the characters from the original. The characters from the original are not these sort of deer in headlights kids. They are 4 sarcastic, funny characters that poked fun at bureaucracy in education, as Dan Aykroyd very clearly states.
Personally, I like the university. They gave us money and facilities. We didn't have to produce anything. You've never been out of college. You don't know what it's like out there. I've worked in the private sector. They expect results.
And also bureaucracy in, regulation, such as the Environmental Protection Agency, these places that are like so protected now and everyone like worships them. There was corruption back then in these companies, and that was the great part of this. It was just a big sort of chin up against all of the bureaucratic nonsense of New York and all the mayors corrupt and this and that. And I thought that was a great mixing, and it really had the flavor of New Yorkers too. You don't have that in this movie. It's not there. This is a story of a bunch of deer in headlights kids that, being as young as they are not going to be very heavy in character, and they're not going to really have that connection. So as much as Paul Rudd's going to try to connect the two movies together with his exposition, you're not going to get the Star Wars, I hope that's not foreshadowing, Ghostbusters that you're looking for. So comments, suggestions, throw mud at me, go right ahead. It's just my opinion.